Hello everybody and welcome to Gene's Reviews from a regular dude, where I do trailer reactions, I react to YouTube videos, I review YouTube channels, occasionally I'll review a movie, but really, I just do whatever the hell I want. A terrifying plea from beyond the grave. Growing up, our family farm backed into the old grounds of an old penitentiary that was finally closed down and vacant. As a child, I was warned to stay away from that part of our property, and Dad even built a high wall to block it out. Seeing as our farm was 22 acres with lots to see and do, I wasn't interested, so it wasn't a big deal to me. It was a nightmare I had on a winter's night when I was 14. That was the spark that ignited my curiosity. I dreamed that a frightening monster chased me down a dark corridor, looking very much like an Egyptian mummy. His muffled moaning was creepy, but the eyes looking out from the palms of his outstretched hands terrified me. When I awoke, I felt a strong sense of fascination mixed with horror that had something to do with the prison. It had been snowing, and there was at least 5 inches of snow on the ground when I decided to check it out. I crept along the wall and kept going until I found a stile, then climbed over and landed on the grounds of the prison. I immediately felt like I was walking in a dead zone. The atmosphere was so different that it seemed like I was in another dimension, or at least a parallel world. As I walked across the field, which soon stretched into an asphalt compound, I saw the tall, rusted wire fencing. It didn't take too long to find a hole in the fence, so I stepped through and made my way to the back of the building. I had to try several doors before I found one that was unlocked, but I hesitated as the fear was growing. The handle was freezing, but I attributed that to the fact that the temperature was in single digits and snowing. After a few pulls, I was able to wrench it open. I looked inside and saw the dark interior and littered floors. I took a few careful steps and was struck by the paint hanging off the walls and ceiling in strips trailing on the floor. There were several upturned chairs and tables here and there as I wandered through the huge building and halls. Suddenly, I heard the sound of metal doors clanging and slamming shut, and I realized that I'd been stupid to come here. The thing was, I couldn't remember exactly where I'd come in, so I started to do my best to retrace my steps. I heard moaning that was creepy and familiar. I didn't start running until I heard fast shuffling across the floor. When I turned around, there was nothing there, but I turned back and continued running just in case. Then the moaning got louder as several doors started opening and slamming in the distance, so I bolted for the door. I found that it was stuck, and I wasn't even sure if it was the door I'd used to get in, so I ran off to find another one. I could hardly breathe due to the rising panic, and I screamed when I heard the shuffling behind me getting closer. Spinning around to see what it was, I was angry to see nothing, so I yelled, "Who's there? Who are you?" I was even angrier when the building suddenly grew silent. So silent that it nearly hurt my young ears. Turning around and stomping off, I screamed again when I saw a large piece of wallpaper unfurl from the wall. Running faster now, I tried every door and window I came across, but they were stuck and refused to budge. Dried pieces of paint began to drop from the ceiling all around me. It was so dark that I was now running blindly. I didn't see the chairs as I stumbled over it, and I hit my head on the floor. It was a while before I sat up, stunned, I didn't see the shuffling apparition coming straight at me. I heard the moaning getting louder and louder while the shuffling began to slow down. Then I saw bandaged feet. They were right in front of me. When I looked up, I realized I was looking at the man from my nightmare. Trying desperately to scramble backwards, I felt the chair against my back and jamming me into the wall behind me. The monster moved towards me as I tried to get away, but I didn't want to stand up in case he grabbed me. Panting for breath, I tried to roll left and right in order to try to crawl into a position where I could get up and run. The problem was, everywhere I tried to go, the monster stepped in the way, moaning loudly and waving his hands. I could see the eyes on his palms blinking at me as they waved past my face. I began to cry, helpless and hopeless. He fell to his knees in front of me, reached his hands out, and held his palms up so the eyes were close to my face. I saw his dark mouth moving under the bandages, opening up and moaning loudly as his palms clasped my face. Screaming in terror, I felt the eyes melding with mine in an unholy visual union, as creating a kind of second sight. I was able to see the monster's reality and was shocked to find myself watching his own life flashing in my mind. There was a young man who was mute and considered by the community as mentally handicapped and dangerous. He was blamed for a crime he didn't commit and then incarcerated, often vilified and tortured by the wardens. The man was kept in solitary confinement for long stretches at a time, and the treatment made him lose his mind. Even though he was mute, he was incredibly intelligent, but the madness soon corrupted him and made him insane. After decades of torture and neglect, he finally succumbed to the exposure when he was wrapped up and left for dead. The cruel wardens were assisted by some of the inmates, who bound him in bed sheets and threw him down a well. I remembered seeing a well as I'd crossed the field before I got to the compound, but then I saw another flash. I could see the man trying to unravel the sheets, and he shredded them in the process while trying to climb out. His thoughts then penetrated my brain, telling me, "Feel what I see what I feel. Tell them I'm good, I'm good." I screamed, "Who are you?" as I cried for him, as well as myself. Then he told me, "I don't remember." I asked, "How can I tell them if I don't know who you are?" I heard moaning and sobbing as the shuffling began. I was now standing next to the chair and saw him shuffling away from me, still moaning and crying. I yelled, "Please, tell me I can help you." Then he disappeared. I jumped when a nearby door suddenly opened. It took a while for me to decide to leave, as I wondered if I should go and try to find him, but then thought better of it. I quickly got out of there and made my way home. Then I tried to conduct some research via many avenues with no results. When I told my parents, they said it was just a dream, and I was grounded for a month. But I'll always remember him. I almost picked up a stranger at a bar, and I'm so grateful I changed my mind. She was sitting at the end of the bar by herself. I was surprised that she was being ignored by the other patrons, for the most part. After all, she was gorgeous. Her profile glowed angelic, even in the dim light of the bar. As I got closer, however, I began to notice the cracks in her facade that undoubtedly made people uncomfortable. Her hand was shaking around the dry martini that she'd ordered, She whispered to herself at odd intervals, and most worrying, the left side of her face was graced by a dark purple bruise. So not overlooked, but purposely ignored. Well, it didn't really matter. She'd succeeded in attracting my attention. I approached her, albeit a little bit cautiously. She didn't notice me at first when I slid into the seat next to her. She was holding a staring contest with her drink and clutching her handbag so hard her knuckles had turned white. I had to clear my throat twice to get her to look at me. Are you all right? That wasn't how I had intended to start the conversation. I had a smooth opener all prepared, but when that girl turned her eyes on me, I thought for a moment she'd burst into tears. She surprised me by laughing instead. "Oh, I'm good." No, I'm great. Today is fantastic. I'm fantastic. I love it here. Don't you love it here?" Her voice had a hysterical edge that I glossed over. "It's one of my favorite bars. Can I buy you a drink?" Of course, I meant to buy her one once she finished the martini she'd bought for herself, but she surprised me once more by draining the rest of it in one go. "Yes, please, buy me anything you think I'd like." I bought her a Sex on the Beach, and she laughed. She had a really pretty laugh. After a few sips and some light-hearted small talk, the tension drained out of her shoulders and the death grip on her handbag loosened. I knew I had chosen right. The night went on, and I bought her drink after drink. She and I really clicked, and she quickly opened up to me. When I asked her why she was at the bar that night, why she was really there, I could see the sincerity of what she was saying in the shadows of her eyes. My boyfriend, no, not my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend. I just dumped him. He used to always tell me it would ruin his life if I left him. She giggled at that, a note of hysteria coming back into her voice. But he's the same one who gave me this ugly bruise. He likes to knock me around, and I finally got sick of it, decided I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. Then she raised her head high and gave me the fiercest, bravest look she could muster. I decided I'm worth more than that. I'm worth everything, and I'm going to find someone to give it to me. But tonight, I'm just looking for someone to mess around with. She winked at me and downed the rest of her drink. I took that as my cue to step in. "Well, I don't mean to be too bold, but I'd love to have a chance to mess around with you." I held my breath and waited for her response. Her face broke out in a grin, and she answered, "I think that's an excellent idea. Why don't we go to my place? I only live a few blocks away." I breathed a sigh of relief and agreed, although I couldn't get my mind off the violent ex-boyfriend. If he showed up, I was sure to run into some trouble. Fortunately, Chrissy, that was her name, Chrissy, saved the day once more. "Hold my purse, won't you? I have to run to the ladies' room before we go." I noticed she stumbled a bit on her way to the bathroom. She wasn't too drunk, but she was definitely buzzed. The way she handed her purse to me without a second thought confirmed it. Perfect. When I was sure no eyes were on me, I slipped out the bar door and headed for my car. Chrissy hadn't seemed to notice that I hadn't drunk at all that night. Then again, she was so focused on her breakup that she hadn't noticed much of anything. That would work in my favor. Although I felt a pang of guilt at taking advantage of her, she'd been through so much already, after all, but not enough to stop me from driving home with her cash and credit cards. You probably think I'm a terrible person, but let's be honest here. I have to make a living. Everyone's got a sob story, you know. Mine resulted in a life lived on the streets. I was homeless for months, eventually saved by a minimum wage position at a shitty gas station. I resolved that I'd never go through that again. When I couldn't get a second job and realized I was cutting it close on rent money, I decided to make sure that I never ended up on the streets again. And unfortunately, this was the only solution I could come up with. If I'd been really cruel, I would have gone home with her. We'd have spent the night together, and after she'd passed out, I would have taken every valuable I could find in whatever crappy little apartment she was renting. But as low as I've fallen, I still can't bring myself to be quite that heartless. All this ran through my head as I made my way home, my thoughts interrupted only by the sounds of the city at night. I made my way up to my apartment and threw the purse on my bed. I was still feeling a little guilty about my encounter with Chrissy, so I decided to decompress with a long shower. I didn't like doing what I did, make no mistake. There was just no helping it. Once I got out of the shower, I grabbed the purse off my bed and went to move it to the counter. I figured I'd go through it before bed and dispose of it in the morning. However, as I lifted it off the bedding, I noticed a red stain on my previously yellow bedspread. What the fuck? I examined the bottom of the purse, wondering if Chrissy had somehow spilled a drink on it. Instead, I noticed that something was seeping out of a small hole torn through the seam. All of a sudden, a chill hit me and I became very nervous. I set the purse back down and stared at it for a moment before fingering the zipper gingerly. I opened the bag and peered inside. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. I couldn't decipher what the mess was supposed to be. I grabbed the towel from around my waist and wrapped it around my hand before reaching inside and pulling something out. One moment, I was staring at the object in my hand, wondering what it was. The next moment, I'd thrown it across the room and was vomiting all over the floor, contemplating how exactly I was going to tell the cops that I'd found that in a random purse I'd stolen from the bar. I suppose given the circumstances, I was lucky. After only a moment of hesitation, I called the police, blubbering my address into the phone. Given the gravity of the situation, the police agreed to overlook my comparatively smaller indiscretion. Chrissy was arrested almost immediately, and the story came out little by little. Of course, I don't know all the details about what happened, but what I do know came from the police, so my information is reliable. When the cops stormed her apartment, they found her ex-boyfriend. When she said she left him, I didn't think she meant in pieces. They found him scattered around her apartment, the entire body but one piece, that one that she'd taken with her in the handbag. Thinking back on it, I was actually very, very lucky, because I had almost gone home with this girl, and based on the state of her apartment, I don't think she would have been shy about showing me the mess. After the incident, I stopped stealing. I've had a few tight months, but I put even more effort into my job hunt, and I'm finally starting my second job in a few weeks. I feel like I know where I'm going in my life now, and that's a great relief, despite the nightmare I've been through. But there's one other thing of which I am certain. I never, ever want to find a severed penis in a handbag again. Now, how about a joke? I think statues are great. They show what great people would look like if a bird shit all over them. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hashtag Mean Gene, all that fun stuff. And if you like this video, tell all your friends, leave a comment down below. And if you didn't like it, then just shut up. And I will see you next time.